Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Stocks are selling off today. This to me is like the rip the band-aid moment off, and I will explain that here in this video. Donald Trump has effectively sent out 12 letters today to different countries telling them what tariff rates they will have to pay. It started with Japan and South Korea, but he extended the trade negotiation timeline to August 1st. So presumably we're going to get some negotiations between now and then, and these may not be the final numbers. I'll explain this, what this means for markets, and why it's not something to panic on. This is not like the 20% drop that we've seen based on the first reciprocal tariff day on April 2nd. This is much different. Do not fear this. Embrace this, as you are likely at the stage in your life of sowing, okay? You are sowing, you're planting. This is not your reaping phase. This is your buying phase or your sowing phase. You'll have your reaping phase, but it's not right now. As you see deals, you want to be striking on those deals, and any sell-off you get is an opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, we will discuss all of this in depth, all of your breaking news and headlines you need to know in markets. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you guys have not done so already, check out the link down below in the description of this video. We are taking this portfolio, at least the goal is, from $75,000 to $1 million over the next 2.5 years, okay? How we're going to do this is by investing in the small cap winners, the AI winners within the small cap space. There's some opportunities in biopharma as well. A lot of small caps suck. They're terrible. They're in debt. They're close to bankruptcy, okay? But some of them are hidden gems that can 50x potentially. And I do like some of the names we are investing in a lot. I do share my positions. I send out alerts when I make them. This portfolio is up 64.25% year to date so far. I think it's going to be up well over 100% by the end of this year. And guys, we're just getting started. This is an AI gold rush. This is an investing gold rush that I want each and every single one of you guys to participate in. I don't want anyone to look back 10 years from now, 20 years from now and say, oh my gosh, I missed it. This AI is going to be the biggest revolution in your lifetime and cause the most change in your lifetime. If you guys perhaps don't have the time to do this kind of in-depth research and scanning of stocks that we do, check out the link down below in the description of this video to come join the trading community. Nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, let's get started. White House Press Secretary Leavitt shows trade letters to Japan and Korea that will be mailed, like physical letters, although Donald Trump posted on Truth Social about the new tariff rate. Now, these are the actual letters that were posted on Truth Social that are going to be sent out to these countries. But in essence, we are going to charge Japan a 25% tariff. Okay, that's not exactly seen as great news for stocks, and I do believe the South Korean tariff rate is also 25%. Now, these tariffs will be effective on August 1st. So there's like 3 weeks of time between now and then, and a lot of people are assuming, or speculating at least, that there is room for negotiations here, right? In the next 3 weeks, that there could be negotiations and these numbers could come down or certain industries could be excluded. But as of right now, it looks like these 25% tariff rates are on everything. Japan, obviously, a big one is on cars, right? South Korea, not exactly sure like what their main export to the US would be, but I do know Japan, a lot of pressure on cars would come from that. Now, here's the deal though. Japan and South Korea are not the big ones, okay? The big countries that matter are China, number one. Number two is the EU, so incorporate all of the EU, minus the trade deal already done with the UK. Canada and Mexico. Canada and Mexico are kind of already figured out. Most goods are covered under the USMCA Act, so they're not going to be hit too hard by any tariffs. We'll see if there's actual deals done or what other countries get letters sent out. But Japan and South Korea, they're not going to make that much of a difference. Okay, they're not the countries that really matter. So although markets are selling off today, it's not really something that I think matters too much. I think some of the fear today is actually, hey, if Japan and South Korea are getting 25% tariffs, what does that mean for other countries that may be a little bit more important? Like long term, India is going to be very important. What is their tariff rate? What is Southeast Asian companies' tariff rates? They do a lot of manufacturing for US based companies. Okay. We're still waiting to see what these other letters are going to look like and to what countries they're going to go to. But as of right now, Japan and South Korea, is that important? No. Is it going to be a catalyst that gives the markets a full-on crash from here? No. So keep that in mind. While it might look a little scary, tariff, headlines are coming back and negatively affecting markets, it's not going to, if I can say this, hit the same way that it hit the first time. Okay? We don't have that shock and awe factor here. This was already kind of expected. Now, Donald Trump says if Japan or South Korea tries to match the tariff levels, that they will be matched back. So if there's retaliation, well, the numbers are going to go up. So I don't anticipate there will be. I think this is really just a push to get negotiations going. Okay. If these countries were stalling, well, now is the push to get things moving. Now, the Fed's paper today flags ongoing risks of hitting zero rates and uncertain outlook. Donald Trump also said today that an additional 10% tariff will be enacted on BRICS members immediately if their anti-American policies continue to be taken. But then, according to sources familiar with the matter, quote, the U.S. will not impose new 10% tariffs against BRIC members immediately if anti-American policy actions are taken. So if they start to get more friendly towards America, then the 10% tariffs will not be enacted. So BRICS members, Saudi Arabia, Russia, Brazil, among others, could be facing a new 10% tariff on top of presumably what the other tariff rates are going to be. We don't know. Again, we don't know what letters will be sent out. They will be posted on Truth Social. So we will get these maybe a couple a day, or maybe we'll get a bunch in a day. We don't know what the timeline looks like there, but we do know we will hear new information pretty soon. It says here that the letters basically state that Japan and Korea's, quote, reciprocal rates from April 2nd will kick back in unless they come to a deal. And the White House has been threatening that for weeks, a CNBC reporter wrote on X, which is basically the way to sum it up. Like, that's the worst case scenario without any retaliation, of course, is 25% on Korea and Japan. But if they want to negotiate and come to deals, well, this is the pressure to finally get that to happen. Also reported that Trump will host a cabinet meeting on Tuesday. Some positive news today. It says the EU will not be receiving letters setting out higher tariffs from the US. So things seem to be going in the right direction for the EU. And again, that's what really matters. China, the EU, Canada, and Mexico. Like other countries, sure, are they important? I think Southeast Asian countries are important. Vietnam, Malaysia, Cambodia, right? Some of these other countries that do manufacturing for US companies. Think Nike, think a lot of clothes, right? Think some consumer products, right? We'll see if those countries get letters, but the EU will not be getting letters. So negotiations must be heading in the right direction. The White House says that 12 other nations will receive these trade letters. And White House Press Secretary Leavitt says the Trump administration continues to be in direct and indirect contact with Iran on a deal. And Leavitt says there will be additional letters beyond the 12 nations, with 12 trade letters coming today. So we're going to get new info we don't have at this current moment today. Leavitt says the U.S. is close on additional trade deals. Leavitt says that Trump thinks BRICS nations are trying to undermine the U.S. And she says on the BRICS tariff threat that Trump is ensuring the U.S. is treated fairly. Julius Baer anticipates a series of 25 basis point interest rate cuts by the Federal Reserve starting in October, says chief economist David Cole in a note today. There is now only a 3.2% chance of a July 30th cut. That fell about 50% today from 6.4% following these tariff letters that have went out. Last week, you were sitting at about 20%. So that's also putting some pressure on markets, I would imagine. Is cuts coming later because of, tariffs, some of these letters going out, although I don't think that is very logical. Like, does letters going out to countries telling them what they have to pay really to speed up negotiations change the projected path of interest rates? Like it is today, but does that make a lot of sense? No. September 17th is when we are expecting the first cut. 62.9% odds favor a cut September 17th. There's a 2% chance of two cuts by September 17th, and a 35.1% chance, still a pretty high chance, 35.1% of no cuts by July 17th. So keep that in mind. ECB press, EC press says von der Leyen that Europe must show strength in trade negotiations with the U.S. Trade advisor Navarro today calls for the Fed board to intervene against Powell's stance. So to get other Fed officials on the governor's board to go against Powell and say, hey, we need to start cutting rates. Navarro says that Powell is causing lost revenue and higher interest payments. He says that Powell's rate hold is inflicting serious damage. And in a kind of wild headline today, Iran's president says the supreme leader believes that U.S. investors can come to Iran. Wow, that's one I thought I wouldn't see. India has made its best offer to the U.S. on trade, and the fate of an interim deal now lies in the hands of President Donald Trump, per Bloomberg. So this is one of the countries where we're waiting to see if a letter is going to go out to India. We just don't know yet. Trade advisor Navarro says negotiations are proceeding well. Iran's president says we could resolve differences with the U.S. via talks. Iran's president says U.S. attacks severely damaged many nuclear sites. Besant says there are things for us to do together if China wants to do it beyond trade. And Besant says I will meet with his Chinese counterpart in the next few weeks. Besant said on the dollar, it could mean other currencies are strengthening. Believe it or not, following the tariff announcements today between, again, Japan and South Korea, the dollar actually strengthened. Most people would have expected the dollar to weaken. The dollar actually went up. The dollar was up 0.5% today, which is kind of unusual. Besant says today that he got a lot of new trade offers last night. And Besant says we're going to have several trade announcements in the next 48 hours. Besant says the US will have growth without inflation. UK's Prime Minister Starmer's spokesperson says work is ongoing with the US to enact a deal to cut steel tariffs. And Trump and von der Leyen, which is the representative for the EU, spoke by phone on Sunday. So presumably that's probably why the EU is not getting letters sent to them. It seems like there was probably some progress made on trade. Goldman Sachs says the Fed may cut the policy rate in September, an early Fed cut on softer tariff impacts and disinflation. White House Press Secretary Leavitt says nations will take trade letters seriously. And she says that Trump doesn't believe that BRICS is becoming stronger. Now, what's very notable today that I think we should point out is the VIX is only up 2.69%. Okay, so you're not getting this huge VIX spike. The VIX is behaving very well. So what this is telling you, what the VIX monitors is 30 days out of puts and calls on the S&P. So what this means is even though we're getting this fear today, stocks are selling off, at least, maybe you can't call it fear, but stocks are selling off, you're not getting that fear bid. People are not going out and rushing to hedge portfolios. So to see that, there's not a lot of hedging today when the markets are down almost 1% on the S&P is actually a great sign. Russell 2000 is down about 1.5%, NASDAQ down about 1%, S&P again down almost 1%. The Dow is down 1.1%. That's also interesting. The Dow as well as the Russell are selling off the most. More tech-centered, indexes like the S&P and clearly the NASDAQ are holding up a little bit better than defensives and small caps. Also worth mentioning today, the CNN Fear and Greed Index is coming in at 75, which is barely in extreme greed, about to fall back into greed. Market momentum is neutral. Stock price strength, extreme greed. Stock price breadth, extreme greed. Put and call options, extreme greed. Market volatility is neutral. Safe haven demand in greed, and junk bond demand currently in extreme greed. Now, last Thursday, we did have a new AI investor sentiment survey. For the first time in a long time, bullish investors outpaced bearish investors by over 12%. So bullish investors came in at 45.0%, neutral investors at 21.9%, and bearish investors at 33.1%. So that was a big difference from what we've seen recently. So just as investors got a little bit more bullish, that's when stocks want to start coming down a little bit off of the recent rally, which is usually how it happens. Now, the percent of stocks trading above their 50-day moving average today falling quite sharply, about 5% of all stocks falling below their 50-day moving average, down to about 71%. So that's actually a good thing to see in this market, right? I actually think today is pretty healthy. Again, getting a little bit of a drawdown without seeing the VIX spike is a good thing. Now, again, the RSI was at about 76. Today it's at 68. So as we talked about before, the markets probably would have went up into the mid 630s without some of these tariff headlines, but then you get exhausted from a technical perspective, like the relative strength gets exhausted here. Well, now you're back in a more normal range. So if we trade sideways for a few, kind of get some volatility up and down and reset the RSI back to, in the low 60s, that's going to give us more room to rally to the upside. That's actually a pretty healthy thing. And believe it or not, I don't think anything that has to do with tariffs, as long as it's not getting worse for China, a really bad deal for the EU, or getting worse for Canada and Mexico, none of the other countries really matter that much. And I'm sure, think about it like this. This is the bad headline, the 25% tariff on Japan and South Korea. We're probably going to get some headlines where Japan and South Korea are going to want to negotiate. We're probably going to get some positive headlines towards negotiations and getting lower tariffs. So this is like the rip the Band-Aid moment off for some of these trade deals, and it likely gets better from here versus getting worse. I don't think South Korea and Japan are going to want to get into a trade deal with the US, or a trade war with the US, the same way that China was willing to take it, take it further. This likely pushes us closer to a trade deal with Japan and South Korea. So again, let me know your thoughts on all of this down below in the comment section. I do think again, we've been kind of due now for a 3%, 2, 3, 4% kind of correction and consolidation. As long as we don't break that 610 level, roughly 609 level, and fall back below our previous all-time high, like, this is fine. Like again, nothing is going to be worse than the surprise we had on April 2nd. I think we're going to be able to get over some of this pretty quickly. I also think, again, this is a rip the Band-Aid off moment where, hey, we're seeing what these rates are going to be. It's as bad as it's going to be. And from this point on, we can start to negotiate and probably get some positive headlines coming out. So not surprised stocks are selling off today, but keep in mind what the VIX is doing. The VIX is not signaling some kind of massive fear. It's signaling, hey, we're falling, there's some hedging, but it's not a fear move. And that's important to remember. So hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. If you guys, again, want to come trade with us live in real time as well, check out that link down below in the description of this video. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.